never, ever remember Lesley as she was. In my dreams, it's just a nightmare, the way I last saw Lesley on the slab in the morgue, the horrible pictures that were taken of her, and her voice on the tape recording, begging and pleading. That's all I can think of all the time.
It is a bleak, foreboding place. For many, the name Saddleworth Moor sends a shiver down the spine. For 30 years ago, it was here in the Pennines, northeast of Manchester, that events took place which would shock the nation. The search for children's bodies dominated the autumn of 1965. Hundreds of police and volunteers scoured mile upon mile of open moorland for the bodies which had been buried in shallow graves. In one of the most horrific cases in British criminal history, 27-year-old Ian Brady and 23-year-old Myra Hindley received multiple life sentences for crimes so gruesome they defied belief. Together they had murdered Pauline Reed, aged 16, 12-year-old Keith Bennett, John Kilbride, also 12, 17-year-old Edward Evans, and the youngest victim, 10-year-old Lesley Ann Downey. Of the 5 children, Lesley was the only one known to have been tortured before being murdered. Photographs of her bound and naked and tape recordings of her pleading with her captors were shown in court. For 30 years, her mother Anne and stepfather Alan West have had to live with the memories of how Lesley died. Memories which will never go away. This is the story of how the happiest Christmas they'd ever spent together turned into a nightmare from which they're still struggling to recover. Above all, it's the story of Anne and Alan West's life sentence of grief. Lives which even today are dominated by memories of their daughter Lesley.
Lesley was a very timid, quiet child. Very, very obedient. She would never lose a temper like children do, like the boys did. If they teased her, she'd cry. She was that type of a child, She wouldn't sort of get in a temper with them. The tears would come. I just melted for Lesley, I really did. I did for the boys, I think it was with being the only girl, We're like, we're mother and daughter, but like best friends. It was Boxing Day afternoon, 1964. I'd been divorced from Terry Downey for 2 years, and now Alan had come into our lives, and the children were already beginning to look on him as a father. I had 4 children, including Lesley. The youngest was Brett, who was only 4. Then there was Tommy, who was 8 years old, a very happy child. And Terry was the eldest, he was 14. And that Christmas he was suffering from a very bad cold. It was one of the happiest years actually in my life, that Christmas with the children. And Alan being in it, of course. It really was. And we loved it, and I thought, well, we're settled here, we're settled for life. Bobby's Girl was on the radio, and I remember Lesley coming running down the stairs into the living room.
Mum, will they help me with my sewing?
Yes, of course I will. Come on, love. Do it in front of the telly, eh? Come here. That's it. Now, Daisy, what you have to do is keep your stitches nice and small.
Are you sure Terry can't go to the fair with us? He can wrap up.
I don't think so, doll. It's a bit slushy underfoot, isn't it? Anyway, Mrs. Clark says she'll go with you. She'll keep you company. I think Terry's better off where he is, don't you?
Pity perhaps you can come with me tomorrow, Terry.
Yeah, maybe.
Aye, we're not made of married, Les. Gaspar pays me about as much as Scrooge, if you hadn't noticed.
And we sat actually together, and I was showing her how to do it. And she'd begged me to go to that, could she go to the fair? Which normally Terry would have been with her. And she said, well, I know my friend's going with her mummy and her sister, the young one. I'm sure they'd let me go. I said, as long as you're going, Mrs. Clark, I don't mind you going, Lesley.
And remember, when you've spent your money, we want you both back here sharpish. Mum's laying tea for 5, and you'll have to get cleaned up after the fair. All right? OK. Off you go.
I was very happy to be that part of the family. You do get fond of children, and in a way I had a little loving for her, being the only girl. But I had love for all the children, but you always had love for one child, a special child.
The name of it was Silcox. It's a very well-known fairground. And from where we lived, you could actually see it, the big wheel and everything, you know, hear the music.
Tommy came home.
Hello, love.
No, Lesley.
Where's Lesley?
So we said to Tommy, have you seen Lesley? He said, well, I saw her on the fair.
Are you with her?
And he says, Mrs. Clark's children's home, but Leslie's not with her,
On the wall up
with
there.
them. So straight away, it was panic. It was panic.
Look, you stay, love. Terry, get your coat on. She might come back, so you stay there.
Alan and I went to the fair. We asked on the fairground if they'd seen a little girl with very curly hair. Nobody's seen her, nobody remembers seeing her. My nerves were absolutely shattered. Everywhere I looked, I seen Lesley, and it wasn't Lesley. I'm so she's there. But it wasn't, you know, it wasn't Lesley. And I remember saying to Alan, she's got to be at home now. And Alan said, yes, she'll be home because she wasn't a child that wanted to be in any kind of trouble.
But for Terry, the guilt of not going to the fair with his sister was already beginning to surface.
It's not your fault, love. Yeah, it is. Look, Terry, will you just stop blaming yourself? Everything's not your fault. If I'd have been with her, Les wouldn't have gone missing, and then everything would be okay.
Terry, it's not your fault. Listen, you go home. She may even be waiting for us there. Your mum and I had better go to the police station. All right?
Yeah, go on, love. We'll be back soon.
You go. See you later. Come on.
I loved her so much, and he was blaming himself. And I was trying to comfort him, saying, Terry should be all right, please God. Don't blame yourself for anything. He kept saying, Mum, I should have been with her. Whether I'd got the flu or whether I'd not got the flu, I should have been with her. It was just gone 5 o'clock and we went to Mill Street Police Station. And as I got in, I was hysterical.
Sergeant, our little girl's gone missing. Look, she went to the fair on the Red Recreation Ground and she hasn't come back.
How long?
It's about an hour
It's
ago.
about an hour ago. Look, it doesn't matter how long she's been missing. Look, it's just not like her. Our Leslie's never late.
Apart from the fact that it's Christmas and with a number of officers on leave, there's no way we can mount a search for a kiddie that's an hour late home. If we did that every time a child went missing, we'd never have time to do anything else.
But it's my Lesley and my Leslie's never late.
No, it's true. Leslie's never done anything like this before. It's totally out of character.
And you're the girl's father?
Well, no. I'm Alan West. I live with Mrs. Downey down at Charlie Walk.
Look, the best thing you can do is go right home and wait. She might well be there waiting for you by now. 90% of cases like this are false alarms.
Look, but she's just not like that.
Please, Mrs. Downey, I'm sure you'll find I'm right. If she's not back by, say, 11 or 11:30, then come back. and we'll look into it.
I didn't like his attitude one bit. If I'd have thought Lesley was a child that disobeyed and I'd have been 7 or 8 o'clock when she come in, I wouldn't have bothered. I wouldn't have bothered. But knowing what kind of a child she was, I was very, very concerned, very. Well, when we left the police station at Mill Street, Alan was very reassuring, not trying to reassure me, but I knew he felt the same way because he knew Leslie's actions, that she wouldn't do anything to annoy me, or if she said she'd be in, she'd be in. I knew he was worrying, but for my sake, he was keeping calm and trying to calm me down.
Whatever I said, it made no effect on Anne. The panic was there, the fear was there. The only way I tried to prove that there wasn't anything wrong was to take him back home again to check to see if Lesley had turned up in the meantime.
Come on, Lesley. Come on. Oh, where is she?
Time seemed to stand still. The hands of the clock just didn't seem to move.
Look, we've got to do something, Alan. We've got to.
Right, I don't care what time it is. We've got to go back. She's been gone over 6 hours.
It was endless. It was the longest night I'll ever know. And as I was running down to Mill Street, people were enjoying themselves and they were coming out, laughing and joking. I just couldn't believe it. While they were laughing and joking, I was feeling as I was feeling. When we went to Mill Street at the 11 o'clock, something to 11, that's when they decided it was something serious. And I knew that because they wanted a full description of everything she was wearing.
Very curly hair, and was last seen by the Wall of Death at Silcox Fair. And she was wearing a blue coat, black trews, pink woolen cardigan, red shoes, and this photo of her was taken only a few weeks ago and is a good likeness.
Yes.
And there hasn't been any argument or anything.
We assure you nothing like that has happened.
No, look, we love Lesley. We just want her back.
Very well. Leave it with us then, Mrs. Downey.
He told us to go home. Possibly he said that she could be at home when you arrive. We left there approximately about 40 minutes after reporting Lesley missing officially, which they accepted as official. And we went home. Lesley wasn't there. She hadn't turned up.
I remember getting back, walking into Leslie's room. And I said from then, the light in this room will never go out, whoever's got it. I never believed that anyone could hurt her. Never believed that. And I never went out for over 6 months. Because we thought that somebody had dropped her off. She no light was there, and we would still be there waiting for her. And I never believed for 1 minute she was dead. No.
Before the police could mount a search for missing Lesley Ann, her body had already been driven by Brady and Hindley up onto the moors to be buried in a shallow grave. For her family, the nightmare was just beginning.
There was something I couldn't believe that was happening to me. I couldn't believe it. I was praying to God that someone had taken her, that wanted a child, that had none, and that they would look after her, as long as nobody hurt her.
Well, the day after Boxing Day, there was a knock on the door. It was about 4:30 in the afternoon, 4 to 4:30. I got up out of my chair and answered the door. And there was 2 men standing there. They introduced themselves as policemen, CID. I told them to come in, took them into the house. So they said, do you mind if you and Mrs. Downey would come to the police station?
Does Alan ever have to smack the children?
No.
They separated us and took Alan in one room and took me in another room. And they were suggesting about, you'd heard about bad stepfathers and what they do to children. And I got very, very angry.
Oh, come on now, admit it. He gave her a slap and now she's run away.
Look, Lesley has never had to have a slap. Look, she's a timid little girl. She bursts into tears if you even raise your voice to her.
Is she a forward child?
What do you mean?
Alan, is she forward?
No, she's not. Look, why are you wasting so much time? Why are you out looking for her? If you'd have started looking for her the moment that we came and reported this, you'd have found her by now.
It was horrible, horrible. I said to them, you should be out there looking for my child, not accusing me or my husband, Alan. I felt terrible. I felt they were convincing me that I'd done something, or Alan had done something to Lesley. It seemed like hours and hours. But they were definitely blaming Alan. In my eyes, they were blaming Alan.
Lies, lies, lies. It's too late to be the loving stepfather now. Stop telling me lies. You're wasting my time and you're wasting your time.
I'm not lying.
You're lying, aren't you? Come on, Alan, tell me you're lying.
I'm not lying.
Right, let's start from the top. How does Lesley react to you?
She looks on me as a father.
You're not a father, though, are you? You're only a stepfather.
No, but she
You're
looks
not a
at me
real
as
father.
She loves me. We're friends.
Friends, is that all? And do you love her?
Yeah, of course I do.
But which way do you love her?
What you on about?
Come on, Mr. West, which way do you love her? Tell me.
I don't believe this.
Tell me, come on, without lying.
Tell you what?
Tell me how you love her.
What sort of person do you think I am?
You tell me. I know what I think.
The way the questioning was coming over to me from the police was that I was responsible for Lesley's disappearance. They asked again the same questions that put me in the category of the wicked stepfather syndrome, which we all know there is a lot of wicked stepfathers or stepmothers about. But I wasn't one of them. I loved her like she was my own.
You're lying again, aren't you? Look, why don't you just tell us the truth? You hit her, didn't you?
I didn't touch her.
It may have been an accident, but you smacked her and she has run away.
I didn't touch her.
Just admit it!
I'm telling you the truth, can't you?
Admit
understand
it!
that? I didn't touch her.
The questions. Did you smack Lesley? Have you hurt Lesley? Where have you put Lesley? This was going on and on and on. And I'm sure that if the questions was carried on much longer, I would have admitted to something which I never did. I would have done that. Just for peace and quiet.
They took me into the corridor and my little boy, Tommy, was in his pyjamas and he was actually crying. And I said, how's he got here? You didn't bring him down with us. He said, oh no, we wanted to question him. I said, how dare you do that without me being there? I said, oh, we can do. We wanted to know off Tommy and I, had Mummy or Alan done anything to his sister?
The interviews may have been over, but for Anne and Alan, there was more to come.
As I said, Mr. West, we'd just like to take a look around, if you don't mind.
Look, we're tired. Can't we just leave this?
We'll take a look upstairs first, all right?
Alan took the police upstairs to search. I was very angry. very tearful and upset. At the time, one of the officers said to me, well, if you or Alan come clean now, it'll all be over and done with for you. I said, we've nothing to come clean about. All I'm interested in is you finding my child who was missing.
Right. You got anything?
Nah, nothing here.
Right. Let's do the next one then.
And then the next thing, we were standing in front of the airing cupboard on the landing.
What's in this cupboard, Mr. West?
It's an airing cupboard.
Yes, but it's big enough to hide a child's body in, isn't it?
Happy?
Seems clear.
Where do you keep your rubbish, Mr. West?
The rubbish from the flats goes down a chute into some sort of skip. How many times have I got to tell you we didn't kill her? We don't know where Lesley is. That's why we came to you.
What's up, Dad?
It's all right, Terry. Go back to bed.
Look, Mr. West.
I had an idea that the thing was pointing at me, not at Anne or anyone else, but at me. The feeling was that he is the guilty one, the wicked stepfather.
It had been weeks since Lesley had last been seen at the Christmas fairground, and the police had drawn a blank. Although Anne and Alan lived with the hope that she was still alive, the weeks turned into months, and Lesley's disappearance was affecting the whole family.
Everything had changed, everything. Not only my life, even the children's had changed because they loved her so much. They kept saying, we want Lesley back, we want Lesley back. In the October time, I was watching television, Alan and I, and Terry. The two boys were in bed, and there was a news flash come on. And it said the body of a child been found on Saddleworth Moors. And not being on the phone, I just had to know from the police, so I ran to our neighbours. And I said, please tell me, have you found Lesley on the moors? They said, no. I said, don't lie to me, I want to know, I'm entitled to know. I'm her mum. They said, no, Anne, go home and go to bed. It's the body of a little boy we found on the moors. And it was such a relief to hear that.
Not Lesley.
I was overjoyed that it wasn't Lesley, thinking it wasn't Lesley. But the next morning, I'd been doped up and I felt Alan getting out of bed and then going over to the window.
What the hell is going on?
What is it, love? What's happening?
It's the press, Anne. The street's full of...
Oh my God! Oh God! Oh.
I knew then that the police had been lying to me. I knew.
Don't jump to conclusions.
Bodies!
Don't mean to say it's all Lesley. They could be here for anything. Please.
Body up the bar!
Please, love.
He said he don't know for sure, and put his arms around me, said don't carry on, so we won't know until we're here officially.
Mr. West, may we come in, please?
Yeah,
Mrs. Downey? Mrs. Downey, we hate to do this, but it's our job. Mrs. Downey, it's our sad duty to ask you to come down to the mortuary to make a formal identification.
Here they are.
We were then driven to the mortuary at Upper Mill, and we were just surrounded by press. And as we got out of the car to go to the morgue, they were saying, "Is it Lesley? Is it Lesley? Tell us, Mrs. Downey, is it Lesley? Is it Lesley?" They rushed me and Alan to a room. Told me to be as brave as possible. It was very, 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 very cold. I just couldn't keep still. I was shaking from head to toe.
God. This way, Mrs. Downey.
I'm sorry, Mr. West. You'll have to wait here.
Oh, no, don't go.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Downey, but he's not a relative. He can't go inside with you. It's regulations. We'd like to, but we can't. WPC Clark will take you through.
Well, I went to go in with Anne, and I said, "Sorry, Mr. West, only Anne couldn't go in," which I was annoyed, because I'm sure that with my support with Anne, if it was Lesley, which at the time we never knew, she had a shoulder to lean on, shoulder to cry on. But they won't accept this.
I was guided deeper into that terrible place.
Would you like to go through now?
The smell was horrible. It was like very, very musty, damp smell. Something had rotted. I don't know why it rotted. She was Lesley, but there's only half of her. When I looked at Lesley, what there was of her, she looked peaceful, and I knew it was my little girl. But I did wonder how she died. I was hoping and praying she had died of shock. That's what was my hope. And my prayer that she died of shock with being with strangers or whoever had done whatever they had done to her.
Within a few minutes, I heard Anne screaming, crying. I knew that it was Lesley. But I was bitter to put someone through what Anne had to go through. There's no need for it. No need at all. I mean, she suffered 10 months.
When we came out, there must have been 50, 60 flashballs with photos all over. I guess I knew it was Lesley, and yet they were all screaming and shouting, "Is it Lesley? How do you feel? Is it Lesley? Answer me."
Cameras flashing away, bulbs going, shouting. It was more like a lynch mob, but it was such annoying that they should intrude. Should have felt something, especially for Anne and the family. But there was no compassion there at all.
Oh, Terry, love, come here. Oh, love. It's all my fault, Mum.
And I remember him saying to me, "Mum, why did they lie to you? Why did they say it was a little boy?" He kept repeating, "Should have been here today only for me." And I was consoling him, "Don't blame so, Terry." But it was uncontrollable.
More than 1,000 people gathered outside the church at Lesley's funeral, and it seemed as though the whole world had turned out to mourn. The press were also there, anxious to turn their grief into headlines. But for Anne, the horror was only just beginning.
A few days later on in the week, I'd had Valium to calm me down. And I was sat there, half and half asleep, half awake. There's a knock on the door. And it was one of the detectives with like a portfolio in his hand.
What now?
It's some photographs. We know that, Lesley. But we have to have a formal identification.
Well, look, let me do it. I can tell you whether it's Lesley or not. Don't show them to Anne. She's suffered enough already. Please just show them to me.
I'm sorry, Alan. Look, I don't have any other choice. You know that. Believe me, if there was any other way, I'd do it.
He said he was sorry I had to do this, but they knew it was, but I had to be sure. He said, we found quite a few, but we brought 2 we think are suitable for you to look at.
I'm going to show you the first one, Anne. You must look at them. You know that, so...
I nearly died. When I seen them pictures, they were horrible, absolutely horrible. They had Lesley naked. She was gagged and bound, bent over a chair, and one of them...
Just one more. You've got to, I'm sorry.
And on the other one, she was on Hindley's bed, knelt in prayer, and her mouth was stuffed up and a gag put around her. Oh, God.
Do you identify her as Lesley, Mrs. Downey?
I was in a terrible state, because I knew when I looked at them pictures how frightened as they would be just to take a coat off, let alone her clothes. And then I remember them saying to me that I'd been needed to go to Mill Street again. I didn't really know what I was going down for, really.
Superintendent Bob Talbot, Mrs. Downey. It was good of you to come.
And I found that Mr. Talbot was very, very, very uneasy.
A tape has been found and it's not very pleasant. But I must ask you if you can recognise Leslie's voice.
A tape?
Yes. I have a daughter in my own, so I know how you're feeling. I'm going to turn this on and then ask you if you recognise the voice, OK?
I started to play the tape. And I heard Lesley saying, please don't make me get undressed. I don't want to get undressed. Please, please let me go on to Mummy. I won't tell anyone what you've done to me if you just let me go home to Mummy. And with that, I heard the monster, Hindley, her voice saying, be quiet, shut your mouth, else I'll give you another good hiding. She was saying, what's your name? And Lesley was saying, Lesley, what's your name? Lesley said, Lesley Ann. What's your name? And then I heard Lesley Ann Weston. She'd made a mistake. I suppose it was in her fear. She said Weston. Then Mr. Talbot turned the tape off. He said it's the worst thing I've ever had to do to any woman, this. I remember the policeman saying he'd been very brave. I thought, I hadn't been very brave. I couldn't possibly be brave. She'd never had a good hiding in her life, Lesley. Till she met them monsters. Never been smacked, never had to be smacked. I do know she was sexually assaulted in every way possible, by her as well as him. How she could stand by and let a little girl beg and plead of her. She even called her mum to see if it'd help her. She was 23 and childbearing age. She should have had motherly instincts. She's just a monster, born evil.
Time has done nothing to diminish the public fascination with the Moores murders. No other crime has produced a couple as depraved and sadistic as Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. And never before in criminal history had a woman participated to such a degree in the sexual torture and killing of children. It was the trial of the century. As the suspects were driven to the courtroom, public feelings were running high. The death penalty had been abolished only 5 months before, so an angry public knew that neither of them would be sent to the gallows. Instead, Ian Brady received 3 life sentences and Hindley 2 life sentences plus 7 years. To their family and neighbours, Brady and Hindley were a quiet, devoted pair who were always in each other's company. But Ian Brady had a criminal history which began at the age of 13. By the time he met Myra Hindley, he was clearly psychopathic and obsessed with the history of torture, sadism, and Nazi atrocities. Myra Hindley, on the other hand, had been a fairly devout Catholic, but with Brady's influence, she soon cast aside the rules which had guided her and entered into the kind of sadistic pleasures her lover offered. The tape recording made by the killers was to be the most disturbing exhibit ever brought before a British court of law. Myra Hindley could be heard encouraging Brady in the torture of Lesley Ann, and as it played to a stunned jury, several people, overcome with emotion, left the courtroom. The recording convinced the jury that Myra Hindley was an equal partner in the couple's terrible crimes. As the killers began their life sentences, for Anne and her family, their life sentences of grief were only just beginning.
People cope grief in different ways. After I buried my daughter, Lesley, as always, I lent on Alan a lot. But he was always having to get the doctor out to give me injections because the pills I was on at the time weren't strong enough for me. I'd wake up screaming. All I could see was the morgue and Lesley and hear them horrible tapes.
I felt that one of us has got to be strong. It's hard to do, so I had to put a false face on. Tried to carry on as the best we could. Tried to have a laugh and a joke, which obviously was all false anyway. I think Anne knew that.
In the early 1970s, a TV campaign was broadcast encouraging families to adopt children. For Anne and Alan, it was a glimmer of hope and an opportunity to fill the emptiness in their lives.
And then I talked about it, I said, well, go for it, you know. I've got lots of love in me. But I was saying it must be a little girl, building my hopes up. And we did get forms, and I also had a lady come to visit me and asking me all kinds of questions, and Alan was in work, he had a good job, and she said, oh, that'll be fine, and we'll think about it. Because so late she'd come back, but on certain occasions she was a different woman entirely.
Can I get you a cup of tea?
No, thank you. Mr. and Mrs. West, am I right in saying this is our 3rd visit? And you were hoping for a little girl?
Yeah.
Why didn't you tell me who you are?
What do you mean?
I mean, why didn't you tell me who you are on the application form for the adoption?
We don't understand.
You deliberately hid the fact that your daughter was murdered. You should have mentioned this on the application form where it says other remarks. It is important, you know.
You mean you're going to turn us down?
I'm sorry.
Look,
I felt the whole world was against me. Are they blaming me for Lesley dying? I've lost a child. I said, and no other child in the world could take Lesley's place, but at least I could offer a child a good home and lots of love. Well, I was very, very, very upset, crying, because I felt as though, is she looking at me as though I've hurt Lesley, that I wanted it to happen, you know. I should have been more careful with Lesley, and it made me ill, it really made me ill. I can never, ever remember Lesley as she was. In my dreams, it's just a nightmare, the way I last saw Lesley on the slab in the morgue. That's all I can think of. I wish she would appear to me. I wished it now for nearly 30 years.
Anxious to remember Lesley as she was, Anne met with the well-known medium Doris Stokes. Although there were doubts in her mind, it was a chance at least of making some sort of contact with Lesley.
Alan and I agreed that we should go down, and we went down by train, and we got there, and she said, "You've come a long way, love, but I don't think I can help you." So I have got a little girl been murdering me all morning called Lesley, but it's not your Lesley.
Don't upset yourself.
I was so downhearted, I didn't know what to do. She said, "She's here now, she's here now." She said, "She's given another name, it's Downey." I said, "Well, actually, her name was Downey." I said, "You know, Alan is my second husband." I had my doubts, I really had my doubts. But then she went on to tell me there's a man up there with a call bill. Leslie's safe with her granddad Bill. And he even mentioned the name of the street where I was born that had been down 40 years that Doris Stokes couldn't possibly have known about. Lesley came through to Doris and said, "Tell Mum to stop crying. She's going to really make herself ill. And I don't like to see her crying all the time." She said she was a very, very bad woman. Myra, she called her. I can assure Mummy that she will never, ever come out of prison, ever. And it has come true. She has got a life sentence now, Henley, and she won't come out.
The session with Doris Stokes had reconfirmed Anne's faith in God, and that Lesley would be waiting for her in heaven.
I've had no life since I lost Lesley. We were a very, very happy family when Lesley was alive. Very happy families, happy-go-lucky. But my life now, each and every night and every day, I am indoors. Unless I go out in the car shopping with Alan to get the groceries, I am indoors every night. Every night. I have no life. I'm in my prison. This is my prison. I'm serving my sentence here.
For what Henley and Brady did to Lesley, I mean, they never only just killed her, they tortured her. She's got to be married. She'll have children. It just wipes out generations, and they can never be replaced.
If you go out, people tend to be nice and ask you how you are and are you getting any better, are you trying to forget. I could never forget, never. Not until the day I die. That'll be the only time I'll ever forget what happened to Lesley.
They try to put in your head that it is God's making. When you lose someone, God wants them. She wasn't taken by the hands of God. She was taken by monsters, Henley and Brady.
I do say my prayers every night to Lesley, every night. But I cannot say the Lord's Prayer right through. I've got told me, forgive us our trespasses. That's one thing I never say in my prayers, and I don't think I ever shall. Because I could never forgive them, so I can't say it. Can't imagine how baby went. I just dread the place. I hate it so much. I will never, ever, ever come here again, ever.
It has been 30 years since Anne last visited Saddleworth Moor during the search for her daughter's body, and coping with such painful memories have been extremely difficult both for her and her husband Alan.
Oh, without Alan, I wouldn't be here today. I really wouldn't. My minister, Lesley's minister, always said Alan was sent to bear my cross that I was going to have to bear in the future, and I believe that was true. He's been a wonderful husband. I don't want for anything. I don't have to do anything. He waits on my hand and foot. He does everything that I should be doing, that I'm not capable of doing. He's a wonderful husband. I love him so much for it. I really do.
No, we never separate. Never. We do hear of cases where people are separated, they've gone their own ways after a tragedy. And there won't be a breakup in our marriage anyway, or our relationship. It's too strong.
It is the love we have for each other now.
Mm. Yeah. The love's got to be strong. Love for each other's got to be strong. They've taken a part of the love away, but we've still got memories. And they can't take memories away.
It's Lesley that keeps me going, definitely. She keeps me going. I know it's her and Alan, but Lesley's there saying, you don't give up, Mum. Don't you give up. I would die tomorrow to be with my Lesley and die in peace if Mara Hindley was dead. If it came on television that Mara Hindley had committed suicide, I would go to bed and willingly die peacefully to be with my child. It might sound selfish, leaving my other children and Alan, but I need to be with Lesley. I need to be with her. That's a mother's love for a child.
It is love and hatred that keeps Anne going. Love for Lesley and hatred for those who took her daughter away. Today, Anne continues to serve her own life sentence. It's a life sentence of loss, which extends almost beyond grief.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.